Hey, everybody. Mark and I have over 20 years of experience as therapists and as addicts in long-term successful recovery. We know better than anyone what works and what doesn't to break out of porn and sex addiction, heal betrayal trauma, and reclaim your relationship.
And we've poured all of our personal and professional recovery and healing experience into a first-of-its-kind program for addicts, spouses, and couples. We call it Dare to Connect.
At least 4 times every week, we engage with you in real time, in the trenches, giving you the knowledge and the tools to take back your life and relationship.
Whatever else you've done on your journey for healing and recovery, you've never done anything like this.
Mark and I, we've made all the mistakes, so you don't have to. Don't reinvent the wheel.
We all know tomorrow never comes. Look, don't wait one more day to change. Claim your free 2-week trial today at daretoconnectnow.com.
Hey everybody, I'm Steve Moore.
And I'm Mark Castleman.
We know the pain and heartbreak of porn and sex addiction.
And we know the triumph of breaking completely free.
Every day, we help our clients find hope and healing.
Join us in the fight to take back your life, your marriage, and be stronger than ever.
This is the PBSE Squared podcast.
Hey, everybody, Mark and Steve on the PBSE podcast. This is episode 219. And this was a fairly detailed question that came in from an addict in recovery. And we'll read it real quick. We know it's a bit lengthy, but it's important to have all this for context for this podcast. So here's what he says. Hi, would love if you guys do a podcast around the effects of years of lying and trickle truths, and how all that affects a full disclosure with his partner. He's been a pornography addict for nearly a couple of decades, and he has had a really hard time coming to terms with his addiction and its consequences. My partner and I have been together 4 years. She found out about all this about 1.5 years ago, that I was being unfaithful through my excessive pornography and social media consumption. I've always had a hard time running away from conflict, and I have a history of communication trauma and also of sexual assault in childhood. So he was sexually assaulted as a kid. I've done everything wrong with my partner. I lied and lied time and time again. I minimized and justified my actions where I felt I could. And for most of my recovery, I just found sneakier ways to access pornography and just flat out refused to be accountable for the hurt that would cause my partner in those moments. I don't think my addict brain could fathom accountability at these low points. I allowed my partner to dig through every site and app and device and find just troves and troves of visits to profiles and video histories and bank transactions. This happened hundreds of times over the last 1.5 years. With each new item discovered, my partner's pain increased. I've had every opportunity to be upfront and honest to my best friend and partner, but I was reluctant to let go of that fear. It's like my addict brain was convinced it's easier to sprinkle dust onto her than to drop a ton of bricks. But that's just not true. Unfortunately, I've realized a lot of these things too late for my partner. And at this point, we have just recently moved into a state of in-house separation. We both have CSAT therapists, but are in very early days of this and still have a long way to go. He talks about retreats or rehab in where he lives are well out of his budget. My reason for reaching out to you is due to the fact that my entire life at this point, our relationship and everything that I've ever, he just says his whole life is now relying on openness and full disclosure. So it sounds like this is crunch time. He's about to lose it all.
Yep.
Is there any hope that I can ever navigate around the fact that I allowed my partner to be the detective? She uncovered at least 95% of what I've done, and I revealed a measly 5%. We've spoken for 1.5 years about aspects of my addiction, and I struggled to dig deep and expand on my occasions of acting out. This, coupled with lack of honesty, just breeds an environment for my partner to rightfully wonder, what the hell do I do now? That's what she's saying. He says, I'm sorry, this is a bit all over the place, but that's the best I can express my situation. Appreciate the work you guys do and everyone involved to make this available for people.
Okay.
Lot.
So that is a lot. We didn't even talk about this in production, but I'm just going to say something right here at the get-go. If you are listening to this podcast and you find yourself somewhere in the 18-year pattern of where this gentleman is finding himself, for the love of God, please, 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 please own it with your partner. Find a therapist. Find a way to sit your partner down and get real. This is just sadly one of too many men that we have worked with over the years where this has been the case. And God only knows what this partner is going through right now. She is, she said, I wonder what the hell do I do now? It's probably an ironic question because I'd imagine she's probably in hell right now in many ways. And that is unfortunate. Now we're going to help with this today. But if you find yourself in that position and you are somewhere before where this gentleman finds himself, please take a page from Mark's book, take a page from my book, take a page from this gentleman's book, take a page from any of the 200 and some odd episodes of this podcast that we've made so far. And for the love of all that's holy, please reach out and get stuff on the table. Find a way to do that. Get a therapist. Don't just saddlebag your spouse with it, but get a therapist, get in front of somebody who knows, get some advice, and start the process.
Absolutely.
Okay. So
yeah, and you'll hear us talk really passionately and strongly today in this podcast. This is not to shame you as a guy struggling, and if you're not honest, it's to try to help you to avoid the absolute hellish, outrageous, ridiculous, destructive. How many adjectives can I add to that list that we caused? And I was much, what can I say, darker, much worse than Steve on this in my addiction years because I hid at all costs. And as Steve and I were preparing this, I had a set of questions here underneath what this guy submitted. I'm just going to read you the questions I wrote down. Why am I a habitual liar? Mm-hmm. Where does this come from? Why do I fear telling the truth and being seen in my totality more than I fear dying? Mm-hmm. Those were all questions I had to ask myself in my early to mid-range recovery because I was a habitual liar. I learned as a kid that the truth is not the best policy. Some fractured, and we've been talking a lot about internal family systems in Dare to Connect in great depth this last month. If you want to understand why you do these things, you need to get over to Dare to Connect where we talk about it in depth, 4-5 times a week.
Yes.
But what I discovered was some fractured, wounded, broken off little part of that child in me learned somewhere along the way that the only way to stay safe from abandonment, from abuse, from trauma, from embarrassment, awkwardness, from shame, the only way to stay safe from all of those crazy, scary things was to learn to really be a good liar. And I learned it so well that I took it into my marriage. I took it into my business life. I took it into every aspect of my engagement as an adult. And I was a compulsive, habitual liar.
Yeah.
And it just wreaked havoc on every aspect of my life, and especially on what this guy is writing us about on every aspect of my relationship with the person that I loved and was my best friend and is my best friend. I mean, that I just held above everyone on planet Earth, and yet I lied constantly.
Yeah. Well, and we know that's a difficult introduction, but we always shoot to be real with you. And with that being said, the good news is it sounds like at least at this point in time, she is agreeing to go to therapy, which is encouraging.
Very encouraging.
He is, although it's unclear about how much this is coming from a place of desperation versus authenticity. And as we say out in here, oftentimes, if it starts with desperation, then so be it. That's fine.
Whatever gets your butt in a recovery chair,
Yep.
So be it. I mean,
That's what
the
does
challenge
it.
here is this guy, let's just say it as blunt as we can. He has severely overdrawn this trust account till it's almost empty.
Oh, I'd say it's empty, and I don't know what they call it in the UK or in other places in the
It-
world, but there's a lot of NSF non-sufficient fund fees probably
yeah, yeah,
racked
yeah,
up as
yeah.
well.
It's in arrears. You're getting default notices
Yeah, I
on
think that
this
there's
trust account. Yeah.
well into the red here. But
Mhm.
but but the good news is as long as we have two people who are sincere and they're in a place where they still are willing and wanting to work on it, there are things to be done. So
Yeah,
with
without
with the
question.
understanding that we are operating behind one hell of a big eight ball here, we are going to try to dive in on some of the basics with this today, okay? Because there is, as long as two people are willing to work, there still is always hope. And Mark and I are proponents of that, and we're evidence of that. So please don't take our hard talk as saying that there's not. We just want to help anyone listening to this who finds himself not far down this road. Please stop and
Right.
exit left.
Yeah, and it's not just
Exit left.
stop. It's okay. What to do now?
Yep,
What do you do
absolutely,
now in a situation like this? And Steve's already given some of that advice. Get it out into the open as quickly as possible
for
with
sure.
professional help. That's one.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to break this down to a couple pieces. So the first thing is I'm going to pull a quote from earlier up in the paragraph, and we'll kind of break it down that way because it's a long submission. He said at one point in the submission, quote, I have always had a hard time running away from conflict and have a history of communication trauma and sexual assault in childhood. I I've done everything wrong with my partner. I lied and lied time and time again. I minimized, justified my actions where I felt I could. And for most of my recovery, I just found sneakier ways to access the porn, right? So he goes on and talks about that. So the first thing that is going to happen if I was in this guy's situation, and again, we don't know him from Adam other than what's being told here, but at least for me, with knowing my stubbornness and my ego and my pride and my managers and firefighters, as we're talking about in IFS right now and Dare to Connect, would dictate, I would I would have to be placing a tremendous amount of focus on a daily, consistent, first with myself and then with my partner, recognition, acknowledgement, acceptance of, and accountability for what I have done. And the fact that and the impact that it has had on her, on myself, and I would need to keep exploring that because chances I would say this with a lot of confidence given how early they are in this. As bad as this looks, they probably don't know quite how bad it really is yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so really being able to explore that on a personal level, one-on-one with oneself, processing through the shame, processing through the impact, practicing empathy, okay? These are things that are absolutely critical if you're going to move forward with this partner at all, because whatever else she needs at this point, I guarantee you, it is to feel safe, it is to feel validated, it's to feel heard, and it's for her pain to be seen.
Yeah.
So it has to begin there. And there are lots of ways to do that, but that is where that needs to start.
Well, and let me say one thing just crystal clear and loud. If this guy does not have an outside support system that's outside his partner
And his CSATs.
and his CSAT, outside those two people, he needs to get one now.
Yes.
Why? Because what was incredibly valuable for me as a habitual liar is I needed to have a support group that wasn't afraid to tell me the truth. Mark, you lie.
Yes.
What the interaction we just had with you, you didn't tell the whole truth, did you? Right? And then to say, and we're confronting you directly because we love you, but let's talk about why you felt you had the need to not be fully truthful just then. Let's break it down. I needed an outside system to not be afraid to confront me about this horribly entrenched and deep habit. And I needed to invite them, give them permission to confront me when they sensed that I was not being honest. And I said to my sport guys, I have a problem with telling the truth. If you see any signs of it, you have my permission to confront me immediately and directly. I needed to have that system. I needed to have a daily accountability partner that I could reach out to and say, hey, dude, just had to touch base with you. Here were the 3 times I lied today. And I just needed to get fully transparent with somebody and just get it out on the table. You have got to have that outside support system. You cannot go this alone. Once a week therapy is not going to get it done. And you certainly cannot rely on your partner to be your dumping ground for the ins and outs of this.
She can't be a place for dumping one more piece of stuff.
Right.
Right. I mean, especially, and then we would say that to anyone listening to this, but that is especially true in this situation. I have no idea where this partner is at, but it cannot be a good place right now. And the least, gentlemen, that we can be doing for our partners in a loving way is not burdening them further.
Not burdening them further. Right. Right.
Right.
So someone say, well, what if I have a slip? What am I supposed to do? You're supposed to go to your support system and you're supposed to fully own that slip or that relapse. Talk about what happened, why it happened, and what you're going to do different going forward so that it has a chance of not happening again. And once you've worked out all three of those factors fully and completely with your support system, now you can share a brief version of that with your partner in your daily check-in.
Let's just be real. Sans the minimizing, sans the gaslighting, sans the justification, sans the bullshit. Yeah. Right? Because I say that again, not in attacking ways, because both of us are bullshitters on this line talking right now. So recovering bullshitters. So that's what needs to happen, right? That's accountability. It's not all that other stuff that we used to include.
Right. So, and I hope you heard the three factors of a check-in with a partner about a slip or relapse. I've always worked out with my outside support system in detail what happened with full transparency, why it happened, what was under the surface and led to it, and what's my plan going forward for it to turn out different. I work all of that out with my outside support system, and I do not approach my partner or spouse with a slip or relapse report until I've done all of that first. Critical.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Mark, we were going to go through real quick a little bit about in terms of that ownership piece, right? There's the transparency around slips and relapses. Let's talk really quick. And I know you were going to give us an abbreviated version of what we teach on Dare to Connect about the language, the 4-step language of safety. Again, I know you're going to do kind of a shortened version of that. We'd love for you to come on over to DCC so we can talk about the full version in detail. But if we were to give a boots on the ground look at what that would be, what would that look like for him in terms of how to create safety for her on a daily basis with whatever's going on.
And just to acknowledge right out of the gate, this is one of Steve's babies that he's developed over years and years and years. So this is me plagiarizing Steve's brilliance. So
well, it's been also developed from the backs of other people too. I wish I could just say I came up with it, but it's been refined through many people leading up to today. But yes.
So the reason I love this process is because I didn't know someone said, Mark, you need to start being accountable. Be accountable, Mark. And I didn't know what that meant. It was just a shaming phrase to me. Oh, what does that mean? Be accountable. And I had an original mentor who helped me a ton by showing me that I needed to hyphenate that word first. Mark, you are account-able. You are able to account for your choices, your decisions, your behaviors, your thinking. You are account-able. And he encouraged me to exercise that accountability, that ability to account. Now, how do you do that? This simple system, again, is come from a lot of Steve's work. Let's say that I'm in a situation where my wife confronts me, understandably from the history, on something that I've done or said that triggers her legitimately in her pain and her betrayal. What can I do to be accountable in that moment? How do I lean in and move towards her and be proactive instead of my old habits of lying, gaslighting, avoiding, minimizing, justifying, etc.? Well, here's the process. When my wife confronts me, it's painful to hear. I'm the deer in the headlights. And so here's what I do. First of all, I say, I am so sorry that I have created the situation where, because of my past behaviors, you're experiencing this today, or my current behaviors. I fully own the fact that I have caused this. You didn't deserve it. You didn't foresee it or count on it. It's not what you dreamed of when we were dating and courting. I'm so sorry that I've created this for you. No partner or wife deserves to experience this situation. I own it fully. I can't imagine how hard this must be for you. And I might even invite her to share with me how hard it is in that moment. Please share with me how hard it is.
Leaning into that. I know that sounds like a suicide run, gentlemen.
No.
Like you're strafing a bank of anti-aircraft guns, but
Wait, Mark, we've been told don't open the Pandora's box. Don't. No, we're saying
no, that's
do.
exactly what we do.
Yeah, we're saying do. And once I'd given her a chance to be heard, truly, genuinely listening, I then ask a very simple question. What can I do today to make your life a little easier? What can I do to restore some small part of this trust account? What can I do to show that I'm serious about making amends and making things right? There's the process.
Absolutely. Right.
Oh, and sorry, the last part. You better damn well be sure that whatever she tells you, you act on it.
Well, and whatever commitments you also make right at the end of that, like this is the plan going forward. Okay. That is how the trust is created. There's lots more to say about that, but obviously this is a podcast, so we will move on. Let's talk for a second about, and he didn't say whether this is happening or not. They're both working with individual CSATs, so good Lord, I hope this is the case. But if it's not, there needs to be a daily check-in happening between these two people every single day, like clockwork.
Mm-hmm.
Initiated proactively by him leading out on that. If she elects to participate, and we hope she will, and that's Mazel Tov. But if not, oh well. Because that it is going to be this gentleman's responsibility every day to sit down and talk about what am I feeling emotionally, what's been going on for me mentally, spiritually, and sexually, what have my triggers look like, what things do I appreciate about you, and anything else that is relevant that day with regard to her getting to know him better. I'm just going to say it straight. Based on what has been shared with us here in this chat, your wife doesn't know you at all.
So
at least not in the critical ways.
Right.
And so now in some ways you got to kind of look at, and here's the thing, guys. And again, I'm not coming down on this gentleman. We say this with love, but we're just being straight with you. Even if the parts of you that she does know, she doesn't. Because of all the lying, the gaslighting, everything else, guess how much of that your wife interprets and believes. Let me see if I can make the noise. I don't know if that came through, but that's my noise for Zippo. Okay. 0, right? Her brain isn't allowing anything in right now from you. So now it is your job, as you're developing out this trust, to teach her who you are while you frankly figure it out yourself as well. But that's going to be you sharing that with her, right? In some ways, I would be looking at that through this lens of, I need to start kind of from square one, right? And figure me out, but then be sharing that with her. So if I'm doing that, and I did some of this in the early stages of recovery, I'd be looking through and I'd be owning up even maybe in the past, maybe to get her to like me. Maybe she said her favorite color was red back in the day. Maybe I need to own that with her. Say, you know what? I lied. It's freaking royal blue. But I was scared you wouldn't like me. It's blue. It's been blue all these years, and I am sorry.
Well,
every time you bought a red thing, I've just let it go because I didn't want to expose that. But I here I am. Right?
You're making a critical point, Steve. This is not just about being honest in my addiction behaviors.
No, it's honest about everything.
Everything. Because
who are you? Right?
What did I spend my whole life? I mean, guys, we're talking, man, I don't know, 40 years? 40 years of hiding from everyone, not allowing myself to be seen. The scariest thing imaginable was to be seen in my totality. No way it was masks, it was pretenses, it was gaslighting, it was lying, because I was scared to living death that I was going to be seen and known. And I couldn't allow that. Now the way out, the way to stop lying and to start being an honest person is to begin to allow yourself to be seen. The good, the bad, the ugly, the all of it. That's what honesty and authenticity is all about. Stop hiding. Start allowing the big bright spotlight to be shown on you as painful and frightening and scary as that is. Steve, you've said something in these podcasts I feel the same thing, but you say it so forcefully. You would rather be fully authentic, transparent, and be seen for all that you are, at the risk of everyone hating and rejecting and basically chucking you out of their lives. You would rather be honest and authentic and risk all of that because you're not going back to the old way.
That is true. I've lived my whole life, first half of my life, 20 something, the better part of 30 years, really, doing that. And I can't go back there ever again, for sure.
No, because what is the scared, frightened part of us say? Mark, if I ever let my whole self be seen, they'll never love me. They'll never accept me. They'll only reject me. This marriage is over. My family relationships are over. My whole facade of religion is over. My I don't know, my career is ended. The risk is too great, Mark. I have to keep hiding. And you've got to face that and decide what is it worth to you? What do you really want?
Yep, absolutely. There's a whole thing we could say on that, but again, we will press on for sake of time. So please be taking that step. Next section, I'm just going to quote this one really quick as well, because again, there was a lot of breakdown. Here's the question that he asks: is there any hope that I can ever navigate around the fact that I allowed my partner to be the detective? And then he goes on to talk about, right, the 95% that he lied about, or that she found out rather, and he maybe disclosed 5% of that, right? And then he talks about how I struggle to dig deep and expand on my occasions of acting out. This, coupled with the lack of honesty, just breeds an environment for my partner to rightfully wonder, what the hell do I do now? And again, we're not coming down on this guy. I hope he just feels nothing but love from us. It's just straight talk here. We're not, the fact that you're reaching out, sending us a thing, or sending us a submission through a podcast on porn, puts you like in the top 2% of all men out there that need to be listening to the PBSE podcast but aren't doing it. So
change a couple of words and everything you sent us, and just put the name Mark in there.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, seriously.
So we're really not coming down on you, but let's talk about it in that vein. Let's talk direct. Being vulnerable, being transparent is not an act. It is a skill set. It is not something that someone just chooses to do. And any guy that I've ever worked with insists that he has been lying to himself. I used to be that guy. I'm a therapist. I know how to be vulnerable and transparent. Yeah, I can teach it all day long. And I'm actually pretty good at doing that. But when I first got into recovery, I could teach you how to do it. I sucked at it.
Yeah, exactly.
One, for even being truthful, and two, without doing it and going to shame, without doing it and going to self-loathing, being able to do it and not shutting down or getting aggressive, or my aggression firefighters coming out, or any of that stuff. Hell no, absolutely not. Right? It took consistent practice with a support system. And let's just be real about this. This is one of the benefits of a 12-step group. It took consistent practice with a bunch of dudes that A, I don't sleep with, and B, who I don't have long-term relationships with, of practicing that with, to be able to do it in my marriage.
Yes.
I needed a place to practice it because no one had ever taught me how. And the people that tried, I blew off because I was in addiction.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
You got to practice it, guys. It's proactive, daily accountability and transparency, getting real with others, whether it's a sponsor, daily renewal partner. The Dare to Connect program is excellent for this. There are multiple venues to do that there. Use a pentagram, drawn in goat's blood on the ground, using a seance. That works too. Talk to whatever demons or spirits need to have, but somehow, we don't care how, you've got to practice it, because if you don't practice it and you don't become comfortable with it, you will show up and hurt her more.
Exactly. I mean, to tell you about practice, this habitual lying was so severe for me that I remember when I was in a different profession before I became a counselor, it was so bad that I would get off business phone calls and realize that I had lied, either embellished or withheld facts because I'd get the deal better if they didn't know certain things, or slightly twisted the truth, whatever of the dozen sophisticated lying methods I had, so they didn't appear to be lying. When I first tried to get honest, I'd get off a phone call, and what was my practicing in vulnerability? To pick up the ripping phone and redial that person's number and come clean with the fact that I had not just been totally honest.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that was scary beyond description? Do you think my heart was racing? Do you think my stomach was hurting? I'm going to call this person back and admit that. But I had to practice that phone call after phone call after phone call for months and months and months until that little part of my brain said, oh, damn, we might as well be honest right now in this phone call because Mark's just going to call him back. And that's worse.
But guys, what Mark is saying, I mean, we can chuckle about it now, but that's the kind of thing we're talking about here, right? The theme here for a guy in this position, and this is what you have to keep bringing to mind. And I'll just be honest, we addicts, we tend to be inherently selfish, not necessarily in a nefarious way, just because it's how we've lived for so long. You have to keep looking at through the mantra of her safety going forward at all costs.
Her safety at all costs. Yes.
I am not going to do this one more time to her. I can't control whether I hurt her or not. Emotions are emotions, and addiction, there's an element of that I'm going to have to work on, and that takes time. What I can control is not lying about it, deceiving about it, whatever, right? From this day forward, my wife is going to be empowered to make choices in this relationship because she knows the real me and not because of whatever line of bullshit was convenient to spew today.
And if my full commitment to honesty ends up costing me this relationship, I hope that's not true, but so be it.
If you give away those parts of yourself to get other people to love you, you'll never be able to love yourself. And the cost for that is just too high. We say that from experience of trying it. We both tried that for a long time. It doesn't work. So with that all being said, now let's talk about this disclosing piece, because he does talk a little bit about that. Like, what do I talk about more going forward, right? About relapses, that kind of thing. You guys are fortunate, and we applaud you for this because you already connected with one or two CSATs. They are excellent experts. I'm a CSAT as well. One of the big core pieces of training is what is healthy to disclose in a disclosure and what is not, be it a formal disclosure or be it a single relapse disclosure, because there is such a thing as too much information about that. We're not going to go through that here. We don't have the time today, but we've done several podcasts on that over the years. We'd encourage you to go to PBSE.com, PBSEpodcast.com. There's a blog button up at the top. Mark is kind enough to do really cool in-depth summaries of all of our podcasts, and it is a searchable database, and you can go in there and take a look for those things. Okay, how to do that and how to navigate that. But the last thing that we would say, guys, is again, we applaud the fact that you've got access to a CSAT. Mark said this earlier. You guys are both really new in the process. The last thing I would ever do is encourage two people to do something different than what a fellow CSAT or a fellow therapist is counseling them to do. And we have no idea how often you're meeting with them. We know counseling is expensive. I would humbly suggest to you and to anyone else listening, Dare to Connect is one of the key components that can fit a need like this very situation right here. Guys, therapy is expensive. Mark and I bill at $150 an hour for our services individually, and that number is probably going to go up soon. Like this is unfortunately the specialized world of mental health that we live in. That many of you are probably shocked at that number because it's so low. I have clients in New York who about choked on their food the first time they heard that's all I charge for therapy where I'm living, right? And I'm sure the UK is no exception in terms of the cost. For the cost of literally, for some of you, depending where you live in the world, a single session of therapy will get you over 30 hours of content. That, by the way, that number is growing by about 5 hours, by at least a couple of hours a month, every month now, because we're adding all sorts of new things to the program. We'll talk about that another day. Please, if you have not tried Dare to Connect, please come over and try it. If we had better resources for you as an addict, better bang for your buck, we would have either made it, created it, or we'd send you to it. But we don't have one, which is why we made this one.
This is it.
So please, we say, I know it's weird to plug your own thing. We only plug it because it's the best thing out there, which is why we've put it together. There's nothing out there like Dare to Connect. There are lots of amazing therapists. There's lots of amazing mental health resources out there, but we've never found a mix of what you get, the amount of content, the quality of it, coupled with the price like what you get. Please come check us out at daretoconnectnow.com. We have a 2-week trial that is still going on. We'd love to have you come join us and see what the buzz is about. And we'd love to answer any questions you've got about that.
Yeah. Thanks for being with us today. Thanks for all of you guys struggling, for listening to our passion. We do care about.
We love you. We really do.
Yeah, we really and just
nothing but love.
Appreciate you taking this seriously and listening to hard things. Right, this is how change happens, when we lean into hard things. So, again, hope to see you over in D2C, and we'll see you in the next PBSE episode.
Sounds great, guys. Take care.
Everything expressed on the PBSE podcast are the opinions of the hosts and the participants, and is for informational and educational purposes only. This podcast should not be considered mental health therapy or as a substitute thereof. It is strongly recommended that you seek out the clinical guidance of an individual qualified mental health professional. If you're experiencing thoughts of suicide, self-harm, or a desire to harm others, please dial 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.